Yes, our speaker today, I think many of you have already know him because he has been a guest just recently, in fact, around 2 weeks ago. And so Dr. Marco Lagman but just to reintroduce him again, Dr. Marco Lagman is an assistant professor of the Department of Geography. He's also a practicing urban planner. He just finished his PhD in humanities by research in Murdoch University in Australia just 2 months ago, I think. And and but he has dreams, and his dreams include being a stingless honeybee and ube and luya farmer. And I think we can all, if you're interested in helping him out with his dream, that will be great. But in the meantime, let us listen to his interesting talk about in celebration, in fact, just in time for Women's Month. So let me call on Dr. Marco Lagman.
Thank you. Maraming pong salamat.
Yeah,
okay, sige. So siguro mas malinaw na po ito, ano. So kung nakikita niyo po dun sa screen, ano, ang title po ng aking talk is Hell Hath No Fury, Stories of Manileñas Demanding Legal Redress Against Abusive and Unfaithful Spouses and Partners. This was during the Spanish period, the last decades of Spanish rule, siguro mga 1860s to 1890s. Siguro, bago ko po umpisahan yung talk, alam niyo po, maraming mga thesis, akala ng mga tao, one-man show siya, and it's not. This presentation was called from data na nakuha ko sa chapter 3 and chapter 10 ng aking thesis. Pero alam niyo po, maraming mga tao na hindi nabibigyan ng tamang pagkilala, no? Halimbawa, nung time na ginawa ko yung thesis, actually sarado yung archives natin. And if it weren't for the help of a friend of mine, si Felville Vieta Ordinario, who works for familysearch.org, and apparently his group has data, hindi ko po makukuha po yung mga data nandito on separation proceedings. So gusto ko lang i-recognize si Felville at yung kanyang mga kagrupo na tumulong po sa akin both here in Quezon City and also in Australia while I was there. If it weren't for them, there would have been no chapter 3. So po maraming po salamat sa inyo, Felville, at sa inyong group, familysearch.org. Gusto ko rin kilalanin yung presence ng aking wife dito sa aking presentation. It's very rare that she gets to watch me. So maraming salamat. Siguro
maraming po. Thank you po.
And also, yung mga former students and friends of mine, no, na nandito rin. Maraming po salamat. One is even a grade school classmate. No, klase ko ng grade. No, she was never my classmate. Katabing classroom ko lang. So, hi Ria. Maraming salamat sa pagnood. So, umpisa na po natin. Alam niyo po, pag pumunta kayo ng archives, ang inisip ng mga tao, ang boring ng trabaho mo. In fact, si former Chancellor Michael Tan said, nung nalaman niya, when I was 22, 80 pounds ago, na you do archival research, my God, that's monk's work. I don't know if it's really monk's work, pero ang isang maganda kasi with the archives that it allows you to get stories about other people, and it allows you to travel and imagine things. And I really love stories, no? Stories are the best way to learn things. But also, aside from that, when you think about stories, merong mga constants dyan. Aside from the characters, there are two. And they're always married, no? Time or history and place, geography. So there is always a period and a setting for a story. And if you visit the archives and you do research there, serious research, you'll realize that people's lives, no, the stuff of their everyday lives are always there, are waiting to be found, and they are bound. These stories are likely to be bounded by spaces, no? And the archives is a perfect place for that, no? If you want to do storytelling, do films, imagine, write a novel, man, perfect place would be the archives. Now, the thing with stories is that some stories are more personal than others. And some of the stories that I unearthed about the 19th century Manileña are details of their marriage. Some are very nice, no? Maraming magagandang stories din na we married for love, etc., etc. Doon sa document sila. But some also show that places that we call the home, no, or residences that are potential fields of care, like what Tifutoan, a geographer, says. No, in some marriages, unfortunately, these places can become sites of matrimonial despair, of hardship. No, and I guess that's a problem even up to now. No, kasi like the Philippines, we're the only country that, aside from the Vatican, that does not have divorce. Although makita niyo sa presentation ko that there was actually a chance for us to have divorce as way back the Spanish period pa. No, and actually before the Spaniards came, there was divorce pala. Sorry. Now structures or shells, mga bahay, mga may walls, they tell no tales. But its inhabitants, once emboldened, once forced, no, they do things. No, they do tell stories. No, and one of the stories, yung mga stories na gusto ko pag-usapan ngayon is about Manileñas who fought back against abusive and unfaithful husbands, or sometimes partners. No, minsan it's the mom who fought for the daughter. No? In a society that was at that time, let's admit it, steeped really in patriarchy. Now, ang isa pang kagandahan dito, it is also the Women's Month ngayon. It's really one way of honoring the Filipina, honoring our ancestors, lalo-lalo yung mga babae who have been, sad to say, wrongfully described as helpless usually, or hindi lumalaban, very shy, very coy, or defenseless. No, like top of mind, we also think about Maria Clara and Sisa. Well, for better or for worse, dahil sa limitangin rin, no? But in truth, no, ang dami pong mga examples na pwede mong sabihin na profiles of courage from two types of files, the adulterios and the asuntos criminales, no? And their stories also provide a window into the lives and spaces of these private persons, no, whose unions unfortunately went sour. Now, sometimes we have to part. It's not always till death, no? And no marriage is perfect. I've been married for 10 years, happily married, but it's not perfect. You need to work at it. But there are also some unions that are really worse than others. Now, here's the thing. As early as 1889, when the Spanish Civil Code was also implemented in our country, no, divorce was actually on the table. It was allowed. But unfortunately, the government, the civil government, takot siguro sila sa religious authorities, did not implement it. And this I got from not a Spanish document, but from an American document at the Archives of States. No, a lawyer named Florentino Torres, no, ini-interview siya ng Sherman Commission, said na actually may divorce, hindi lang ma-implement. Kasi nga takot yung mga otoridad. Now, pero despite that, no, na walang divorce, a lot of women, a good number of women, filed for separation. But here's the thing. At dito mo makikita na knowledge is really power. Some women understood the legal system and knew how to work the system. No? And that allows you to, move in a space that was very patriarchal. May enough space ka to maneuver. No? And separation was allowed, and damages and alimony could actually be collected. Alimony, sa mga hindi po familiar, even when a woman files for separation, di ba, usually wala naman siyang pagkukuhanan ng ikabubuhay, lalo-lalo na nung panahon, when many were not expected to work among the upper classes, they could collect what we call alimony. This is basically a monthly pension or monthly from the husband para supportan siya at ang kanyang mga anak. Now, kung curious kayo about the Spanish Civil Code, and it's available sa UMich Library, it's online, ang grounds for divorce sa Article 105 are the following. Number 1, adulterous wife. Letter B, a husband who causes public scandal that brings shame to wife and children. Very general yun, ano? Medyo maraming, kasi sa adulterous, malinaw eh. Okay, nakiapid ka sa iba na lalaki. Dito, parang subject pa siya to interpretation, marami pa. And the commission of personal violence or insults. Sa batas natin noong panahon, ang ginagamit sa kanila pag nambugbog ang asawa, maltreatment. Yun ang ginagamit na term. Anyway, so ito lang ang nakakalungkot. Ang gender-specific crimes, gender-specific ng crimes noong panahon, and bias against women. For example, a woman na nag-commit ng adultery, 2 to 6 years in jail yan. Pero ang lalaki na ng babae, lighter ang sentence, 6 months to 4 years. Walang explanation kung bakit. No? Moreover, ito lang yung nakalagay na phrase, and I quote, "The husband who keeps a concubine with scandal," was explicitly stated in Article 347. Terms such as bigamy or concubinage were not even used. Glaringly absent po siya. Doon pa lang makikita mo, that's patriarchy for you. We're not discussing it. Pwede sa babae, detalyado yan. Most women who filed charges against their spouses were from the upper class, but there were exceptions. And let's start with a story, and this basically stories about women who fought back, no, and how they got what they wanted and needed, no, return yung property nila o na-protekta ng mga anak nila at yung person nila. Well, the first story is actually about a lavandera who comes from the lower classes, no? So, si Eugenia de Maulig, no? Ang asawa niya ay musikero. Si musikero na si Gregorio Lisboa ng babae. Ang babae niya apparently ay si Maximina Reyes na storekeeper. So not bad, no? Middle class sa isang public market na ang asawa ay matador or butcher, si Mateo Santos. Ang interesting po dito ay may mga witness siya at ang witness mismo ay isang kapwa storekeeper ni Eugenia, si Canuto de Jesus, no? At ang nakakatakot, ang nakakalungkot po dito, yung sexual relations nila ni Maximina at ni Gregorio naganap sa maraming lugar. And in fact, they ended up being caught in the act. Pero para makita mo kung gaano sila kawalang hiya, no, doon sa kwento, nagsakikita pa sila sa sabungan, a very public place. Diba? Sabungan pa. Talagang walang hiya talaga. Hindi nila tinago na yung kalokohan nila. Ang kasamang palad, wala ang nakalagay na record kung ano ang nangyari sa kaso ito. Basically, nakalista lang siya at ito ang detalye niya. Ngayon, may iba pang mga stories naman, for example, this one, na yung babae, galit na galit kasi may kabit yung asawa niya at binahay. Ngayon si Doña Rosario Manabat, 1896, panahon ng Philippine Revolution, reported to the courts that yung asawa niyang Chinese, si Fernando Siquinco, may kabit. Or bigamy is emancipamiento. Yon, that's the term in Spanish, no? And itong nakakagulat, yung concubine niya was also Chinese. Now, para lang bigyan kayo ng context, 97% of Chinese immigrants in the Philippines during that period were male. So this must have been a very rich man for him to afford to bring over a Chinese person bilang asawa niya. Baka ito nga ang una niyang asawa for all we know eh. Si Doña Rosario Manabat ay pangalawang asawa. No? From China yung isa. No, unfortunately for Doña Rosario, wala siyang maklaim na kahit anong asset kasi yung iron shop hindi niya na maklaim, binenta na ng kanyang asawa sa isa pang Chinese person. So magulang din yung Chinese na naisahan niya si Mrs. Na binenta niya na. Wala ka na, nawawala na siya ngayon. Hindi na makita kung asaan at walang nagsumbong sa mga tauhan niya. Diba? Gawain po yan ng maraming kalalakihan pag ng babae yung kaibigan nila, walang magsasalita, walang krimen na naganap sa kasamaang palad. No? Now, there were many examples of what we call domestic violence. No? And most of the women who filed cases in court for legal separation were victims of physical and or verbal abuse. No? And even sexual violations na sa current day laws natin would qualify as domestic violence. And dito mo makikita na violence is something that we experience and we are familiar with, no? It's usually physical. It can also be structural, no? Society inflicts violence by preventing people from achieving their potential, no? But one thing that is very important here is the fact that violence is also an abstraction. It has to be defined. Kailangan mo siyang ma-define para maintindihan mo mabuti and to understand anong karampatang o anong gravity nito. It's the same with terrorism, no? Dun sa Supreme Court oral arguments ngayon, di ba? Parang they talk about terrorism as if it's something new, but it's not, no? The term might be new. The practice wasn't. No? So that's one thing na kailangan nyo makita na, you know, definitions of things change over time. And sometimes we have to define something to control it. No? So, ang isang example nito ay si Cecilia Pita, no? So Doña Cecilia must have been Spanish because she lived in Intramuros, and in 1865 she suffered, and this is terrible, punches, kicks, and worse, starvation from her husband. A Spanish Peninsular or Spaniard born in Mother Spain, no? Don Luis Ortiz. That's terrible, no? How, hindi lang physical pain ng binugbog ka, yung pain na hindi ka makakakain. Nakasira ng ulo po yan. But it also goes to show how dependent these women were on their spouses. Something na baka hindi mo makikita sa lower class women at that time who were really working. Starvation. No? That's terrible. Now, another one, si Jonicia Aguilar, suffered greatly from her beating at the hands of her husband, a machine operator, na she stayed at Hospicio de San Jose for a certain period of time to recover from injuries. No? And in 1899, Epifania Concepcion had it worse. No? Hindi lang siya binugbog ng asawa niya na fencing instructor na si Angel Peña, pinalitan pa siya ng ibang babae, si Josefa Morales. No? Itong si Engracio Tupas naman, yung last case dito, this is unusual. Live-in partner niya. And this is interesting. Kung akala ninyo, uso ang live-in ngayon, may live-in na noon. No? Marami mga tao nun di nga kinakasal kasi ang mahal-mahal magpakasal noon. And Engracio Tupas and Anacleta de Guia were live-in partners. They were cohabiting in the house of Anacleta's parents. Now, in one incident, nagkagulo sila kasi mukhang I think the parents were pushing na anong plano mo para sa anak ko? Pakakasalan mo ba o hindi? Siguro, napraning si lalaki, nagsasaksak niya yung mag-ina. Namatay yung nanay, buhay yung partner. But he escaped. This happened in Calle Magdalena in Trozo. I think Calle Magdalena exists until today. No? Nandiyan pa siya. And another one, and this is really sad, kaya nga pag nababasa kayo ng documents, minsan yung stories, you need to rest kasi stressful din siya. Like si Paula Tyson was a seamstress who just lost her baby boy, no? A few months old. So, nag-isip siya, bisitahin ko kayo kapatid ko para malimutan yung problema ko. Ang tanging kasalanan niya lang yung 1893 ay hindi nasabihan si Jacinto. Naaalis siya. Pagbalik niya, inupakan siya. Sinipa siya, sinuntok siya, iba-ibang bagay ng katawan, at ang pinakamala, yung facial and neck injuries. At, ulit, nakakatakot to pinrevent niya yung asawa niya from leaving the house. Parang this is unimaginable these days, no? Pero noon, nagagawa nila yan. And despite the severe beating ang binigay lang ng court na sentence was 21 days for maltreatment. Okay? When in fact, ang rules ng nasa civil code nila at that time, pwede hanggang at least 4 months. At least, minimum 4 months. It was just given 3 weeks. Now, sometimes the daughters can't fight, but the mom can. And in this case, a Chinese mestizo tricked a young Maria Josefa del Rosario. She was just 19. And he was charged with seducing, abducting, and raping the 19-year-old daughter of Filomena del Rosario. Now, based on the personal accounts, this guy was apparently rich. He was a broker. Like Filomena, niligawan niya, naging sila, nagsama sila sa isang tahanan at nabuntis. E nung nabuntis, ayaw niya na. In fact, he denied her. Tinawag niyang kasambahay lang or servant. So, nung naramdaman niyang kakasuhan na siya, buweltahan na ako. Bayaran ko na lang ito kaya ng 2 piso kada linggo. That's 8 pesos a month. That's a good amount of money. That's like 16,000 pesos in 1998, 30,000 pesos today. Kung isama mo inflation. 30,000 a month. Parang instructor 5 ka sa UP. Parang ganyan. So, medyo not bad, no? Pero apparently, malas niya, hindi na bibili yung mga Del Rosario. So, tinuloy yung kaso, pinreso siya 8 months. And he was assigned as a laborer sa public works. Now, gusto ko lang pong linawin ito. Pag kayo po ay in-imprison at hard labor, pwede kayong mamatay. Pwede kayong mamatay dyan kasi nakakapagod magtrabaho sa daan. Ewan ko kung nakakita na kayo nagtatrabaho sa daan. Kasi yung ganun, tapos wala ka masyadong tubig, wala ka masyadong pagkain, pwede kang ma-deads dyan. Ay ito talaga malas ni Junicio. Sana may backer siya kasi kung hindi, lagot siya. Pwede niyang ikamatay yun. Now, another one is a mother felt that her daughter had already been missing for a year. Okay? 1 year na pong nawawala yung anak niya. Ang accounts, ang nangyari, yung daughter niya, na nandyan sa slide ngayon, si Maxima Guareno, inutusan lang na bumili ng bigas ng kanyang asawa sa market. And all of a sudden, she disappeared. No? So ang ginawa niya, ang kiniklaim ng ni Potenciano de los Reyes, parang wala mo yung anak ko rin rito, hinahanap ko rin siya gaya ninyo. So 1 year siyang nawala. Eventually, napag-alaman. Binigbog niya yung asawa niya, again, binawalan niya umalis, forced to have sex with her. And mind you, pansin niyo po walang charges dito of rape. Wala pang rape nung time na yon. Walang marital rape nung time na yon. I think hanggang 1920s, 1930s, walang marital rape sa Pilipinas. Ang assumption ay it is something that has to be given to the partner within the marriage. Kasi nga, di ba, sa anthropology, people enter into marriage so that sex can be legal. At least, no, technically, yan yung lumalabas. So, hindi siya kinasuhan, si Potenciano was never charged with rape. He was just charged with abduction. No? And then the court noted na actually, you asshole, you deserve punishment, corporal punishment for what you did. But sige, mag-spend ka na ng 20 months in jail and pay your wife 200 pesos in damages. That's a big amount of money at that time. No? Malaki na po yan. Pero dito mo makikita na bago talaga ang batas. Malinaw po yan. This also a good thing about doing archival work. Naiintindihan mo kaya nagbabago ang isang bagay. At bakit, no? This one naman, itong worst, no? Praning siya, jealous husband with bolo, no? So, si Elena Nicolas at si Vicente Santos mag-asawa. At dito mo makikita na sobrang mahal mabuhay sa Maynila noon that they had to share a house in Binondo with other adults and a minor. I'd like to emphasize, this was not rare. House sharing, bed spacing, they weren't rare at that time sa Manila. Maraming pong kasong ganyan. Pero yung kaso ng pangtataga ng misis, ibang kaso po yun. So Eleno claims that he saw Martin, one of his housemates, lying with his wife. But the man, well, escaped through the window. After that, he hacked his own wife with a bolo and caused the following injuries. This is kadire. 3 cuts ranging from 1 to 3 inches, no, on both sides of the face. Loss of the middle and index finger sa right hand. Loss of the thumb sa left hand, and a 2-inch cut from the thumb papunta sa palm. It took 70 days for Vicenta to recover, but she suffered permanent deformities. She's scarred for life. And for that, Mr. Nicolas is only what? Sentenced to 2 years and 4 months in prison. At sa lagay po na yon, steep punishment na siya. Kasi, ang punishment niya ay mataas. Then ang kinonsider ata doon would be the economic loss, no? Yung economic productivity ni Vicenta has already been compromised. Yun lang po. It's that terrible, no? In fact, gusto ko like my wife and I had this conversation a while ago about this. So siya sabi ko sa kanya na hindi, kailangan mo makita na economic talaga ang reason kung bakit. Kasi nung panahon, ang economic crimes, mas mataas pa. Halimbawa, nagnakaw ka ng isang piling ng mangga sa kapitbahay mo. Minsan, mas mataas pa ang sentence mo kaysa ng rape ka nung panahon. Bakit? Kasi in a capitalist world or society, yung dangal ng tao, hindi mo malagyan ng economic value. Pero yung mangga, oo. O yung fruit, oo. May mga case na ganun. In fact, I would encourage people, if you're interested in history or geography, you could do this, no? Pwede mo silang pag-aralan. Pwede mo pag-aralan ng ganyang klaseng mga data and do a tale of the tape, no? Sino ba ang mas malala sa magating sa parusa? Economic crimes or crimes against the state or personal violent crimes? Pwede mo i-compare yan. And so far, sa nakikita ko, economic crimes ang pinakamatindi. Okay. Makikita mo rin yung patriarchal standards, no, with respect to unfaithfulness and punishments, no. Ang adultery and bigamy sentences, mga 6 months to 4 years, no. Itong case naman na to, si Don Jose Yatco, talamak na manyakis. Ngayon, uso ang hat noon. So, isa sa mga status symbols yun, may maganda kang hat. So, apparently, he went to a shop and yung sales girl na na taypan niya, si Lucrecia. Naging sila. At pinakasalan niya. So he was guilty of bigamy and sentenced to a year in jail. Yung wife niya, si Doña, yung wife actually ni Don Jose Yatco complained that she had Mr. Yatco's actions had inflicted permanent damage or pain sa reputation ng family. So doon mo makikita na yung grounds actually was more scandal than bigamy. Yun ang ginamit ng wife, but the court decided no, it is bigamy. So ang parusa sa kanya ay 1 year in jail, and that's only a quarter of what he was supposed to have received. Now he was convicted in absentia. Lucrecia was also convicted in absentia and was supposed to spend 6 months in jail. So parehas yan, yung lalaki at yung kabit. Despite the law recommending 4 months imprisonment for physically maltreating his wife, yung kanina kong kinuwento, si Don Jacinto was only made to spend 21 days in jail in 1893. Yun yung kanina example. Now, how do you compensate the aggrieved at that time? No? Compensation and protection, maraming mga forms yan. Pero ito yung 4 na kailangan mo makita. Yung physical distancing from the husband, ilayo siya. Kasi threat yung husband niya. So parang PRO ba? Hindi ka pwedeng... Ano ba yung tawag doon? Basta may law, di ba? May provision sa batas na bawal ka ilang meters away from this person. Ganun din yon. Bawal ka, lapitan yung kasama mo habang the case is being discussed. No? Meron din na yung mga anak mo, how do you protect the children? So they have to be taken care of by the parents. Sa dinami-dami ng kasong nakita ko, iisa lang ata yung kaso na yung lalaki ang nag-alaga ng mga anak. No? Karamihan nanay talaga. Support, and ito ang pinaka-importante, paano yung monetary and financial support for the woman and the children, wife and children, especially those who are legal minors. No? And also, paano naman yung properties ng babae bago siya kinasal? Kailangan niyang mabawi yun. At doon mo makikita kung ano yung kayamanan ng mga tao noon. Ano yung titingnan natin na kayamanan ngayon, ano yung titingnan natin na kayamanan noon, at gaano ba sila kayaman noon? Ano ba ang mayaman na household noon? So, it gives you an idea of what these spaces were like at that time. Ang nagsabi sa akin yan was my advisor mismo, si Dr. James Warren. Sabi niya, you know what? You have to look at the data, look at their assets because it says a lot about them and what they valued, no? Okay, so punta ko tayo dun sa mga cases, no? Usually po, saan pupunta yung babae after yung case? They usually went back to their parents' homes. Balik sa magulang, no? And naisip ko ngayon I'm also a parent, no? Na-realize ko, and I still have a living parent. Na-realize ko na you don't stop being a parent. And ito yung other side ng stories nito, na yung mga parents are always there for their children. But some weren't, no? And some of those who had no parents had to go to a beaterio or a religious house where residents lived a life of prayer and seclusion. Yung beaterio po, inumpisan yan sa Pilipinas, earlier part pa ng Spanish colonization, mga 1600s. Ito yung mga namatay yung mga asawang sundalo or naging orphan and wala nang mapuntahan. And ang layo-layo ng mother's pain, so they ended up in the beaterio. Pero eventually, naging place din siya to save the dignity and lives of women who were abused. Some of them went to their families, relatives, and friends, no? Pero gusto ko lang isingit ito. Hindi naman lahat ng mga nangaliwa noon ay mga lalaki lang. May mga babae ding nangaliwa noon, no? At yung may isang kaso nga wherein yung lalaki na kinasuhan of adultery, sinabi niya, bakit right now yung asawa ko nakatira sa bahay ng kaibigan namin na lalaki? So the court ordered the woman to go to a beaterio kasi feeling nga nila kinakaliwanan nila ang isa't isa. Okay? Yun ang tingin ng kaso. Actually, nakakatawa yung mga kaso pag binasa niyo siya kasi ang hahaba ho niyan. So, unti-unti makita mo, ay, may chismis dito. But anyway, so back dun sa mga kwento, no, some of them moved back to their parents like Isabel Villonco, no? Ayaw niya nakausapin yung kanyang Chinese husband, but she was a mestiza, so she went back. Ano po ito? May umiilaw. Okay lang po ba? Naririnig po ba ako?
Yes po, naririnig ko.
Okay, sorry kasi
Apo.
umilaw yung chat. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Oo.
no, sorry. There's also some discussion sa chat rin.
Okay. So, all right, so I'll just continue, no? So, yan. So, makita mo, Chinese mestiza didn't want to have anything to do with their unfaithful Chinese husband, si Lim Tiongco. Gusto ko to point out po, marami po mga kaso ho rito, and hindi naman, this is not to be racist, pero marami po mga kaso na na-encounter ko. Ang person, yung husband na supposedly unfaithful was Chinese. And I don't know why, no? Ang labo nun. Pero dito mo makita one thing. Walang problema ang mga tao na maghalma. Wala talagang, di ba, mula noon hanggang ngayon, walang problema ang mga Pilipino na mag-intermarry with other cultures. Chinese mestiza, Chinese guy, India, Chinese guy. Wala pong ganong, wala tayong problema doon. Hindi siya issue unlike in other societies. In the Philippines, that wasn't the case. Okay? Even back then. No, but yun nga, again, similar to Isabel Villonco, a 20-year-old Donya, si Angela Sabinosa, hiniwalay niya rin, bumalik siya sa mga magulang niya. Kasi binubugbog daw siya at sinisigawan ni Manuel Leyva. So, mind you, abuse at that time or injuries, ang case of injuries nung panon doesn't necessarily mean sinapak ka, ha? Pwedeng ininsulto yung pagkatao mo. Halimbawa, tinawag kang puta o puta ng mga Chino. That's grounds for a case, injuries case, nung panahon. So doon mo makikita rin na nung panahon, importante yung pagkatao mo, your person. Your person was really important. Yung dignidad mo. Pag feeling mo na this person, kailangan mong i-defend to the death, no? So, anyway, meron namang isang case wherein ito si girl na mukhang may issue rin si girl. Si Dolores Gonzales na pinanganak sa Espanya at Castilla, no? Nag-decide siya na titira muna ako sa bahay ng friend ko habang inaantay ang resulta ng case ko. Pero napagkaalaman na hindi siya nakatira sa friend niya. Nakatira siya sa isang niyang na boyfriend na mukhang lover niya, no? Si Vicente Palacios. Therefore, in order siya, si Doña Dolores, bawal ka niyan, pumunta ka sa beaterio. So, nag-assign sila ng beaterio para sa kanya. Okay? So, balik po tayo ngayon. May mga babae na nag-stay sa religious house, which makes you wonder, bakit sila pumunta ng religious house? Pupunta ka lang po ng religious house kung wala ka talagang mapupuntahan na, wala ka ng pamilya, etc., etc. Parang ang labo nun sa kulturang Pilipino, no? Wala na po akong mapuntahan. Wala akong kaibigan. Hindi mo rin alam kung ang mga babae ba pag nag-aasawa, nawawala rin yung pagkatao nila nung panahon pag-galing sa upper classes na ito lang ang buhay ko, yung bahay ko, at yung asawa at mga anak ko. Mapaisip ka eh. Medyo advanced na mag-isip pero makikita mo na doon pala sa kaso, pwede kang paisipin na bakit wala na silang mapuntahan? Ano kaya ang dahilan kung bakit? Kailangan beaterio pa ang puntahan mo. Now, ngayon, let's talk about women's assets, no? All of us, di ba, when we get married, we bring assets into the marriage, no? And they need not become conjugal property, personal property mo yan. So a lot of them tried really hard to get their jewelry back, for example. Yan, importante yan. Or get their clothes back, no? In fact, may isa si Doña Angela Sabinosa, naghingi ng court extension. Sabi niya, extend mo muna yung deadline ng pag-file ko ng separation, di divorce, I'm sorry, separation. So I have to get hold of my personal assets, no? Now, just to shed light on how rich these people were or ano ba ang kayamanan noon, may isang babae from Daet Camarines Norte, so Bicolana, si Doña Julia Moreno Sanchez. Nilista niya, ito po ang aking personal property na gusto kong bawiin from my own marriage, no? Dadaling ko to palabas. No? Meron siyang 34 personal assets, no, na gusto niya i-keep. Yung katre ko, yung wooden bed, yung mga kemis, di ko na kung anong kemis, ano yung pang-taas ata yan, no? 10 pieces, 15 skirts, 2 towels, 11 complete dresses. Wow. 4 pairs of shoes, a variety of bags and purses, rings and pins made of gold and precious stones, among others. Grabe. Naisip ko tuloy, wag naman, pag kunwari sabi ng asawa ko, ayaw ko na sa'yo. Ano yung kukunin niya? Baka kunin niya lahat. Wala nang matira sa akin. Anyway, balikan po natin to ha. Ito ang isang babae na privileged ng background, si Luisa Rivas. Ito yung mga gamit niya. 4 bundles of clothing. Doon sa mga bago pa lang, hindi nakapunta sa talk ko last time, walang RTW noon. So, ang bawat item noon was unique. Kaya mahal siya. Kaya nga pa nagkakanakawan noon, hinahanap pa ng pulis at nababawi pa minsan ng mga damit kasi sobrang siyang valuable noon. Ngayon, table and lamp made of marble. Mayaman, ikaw na. At wag ka, may sewing machine ka. Status symbol po yan noon. Noong 1860s, nagkaroon ng craze sa Manila on sewing machines. In fact, yan ang isa sa mga #1 commercials ng mga dyaryo noon para sa mga babae. Na 10 reales lang kada buwan, makakakaroon kaya ng sewing machine. That is 1 peso and 20 centavos a month. Okay? Bed and pictures. I think hindi pictures ng parents. These were photographs of her grandparents. So, mayaman siya. And it gives you an idea of the material lives of the rich at that time. Now, given the assumption that women were financially dependent on their spouses, no, Article 57 naman of the Spanish Civil Code tried to protect them, ensuring na they could receive child support and spousal support while court cases were ongoing. Ano yung range ng alimony noon? It was between 8 to 25 pesos. And there are several examples, no? Like ito, Isabel Villonco, yung Chinese mestiza. Nanalo siya sa nabababae niyang asawang si Lim Chongco. Ang natanggap niya na alimony was 8 pesos a month. Tapos yung 200 pesos in lawyer's fees. Oh my God. 200 pesos. Magkano kaya yan ngayon? Lahat yan babayaran ni Lim Chongco. Now, in addition to her jewelry, Junicia Aguilar wanted 1/3 of her machine operator husband's monthly income as her means of support. Again, malaki po ang 1/3, no? Ang sakit nun. Oo, na-imagine ko nga, no? Oo, just imagine, sakit nun. Now, Doña Josefa Basterechea of Quiapo was due to receive alimony of 15 pesos from her spouse monthly. Another one got 20. Now, the one who got the most was Cecilia Sanchez Pita. Hindi lang 25 pesos. I think what she wanted was even more than money. She got her public apology. Di ba nakakatuwa? It's not just about the money. It's about my dignity. It's about my person that you destroyed. No? So doon mo makikita na hindi lang lahat ng bagay, pwede mong i-quantify. Lalo na yung pagkatao. Lalo na yung buhay kong nasira. Now, at ito pang nakatawa, may mga cases na ayaw sabihin ng lalaki, wala po akong perang pangbigay ng alimony. Wala kang pera? Sabi ng korte, no problem. We will share it your assets kasi di-divide namin evenly. So itong nangyari kay Mariano Lactapi. Dinivide nila yung 12 rattan chairs, wooden table, sewing machine, mirror, lamp for pictures and paintings, as well as a kahadiyero. Kung ano man ang contents niyan, hati tayo, pagatian nyo ng asawa nyo, or gagamitin namin yung para sa asawa mo, para sa alimony niya. No? In the case of Epifania Sanchez, kumuha pa sila ng ng master carpenter, si Atchat. Para, sige, ikaw na ang mag-check. Ano bang value? Ikaw mag-valuate ng furniture bago natin to ibenta. At itong pinakamalaking kayayan, si Don Victor de la Vega ay may-ari ng isang luxury goods shop, Las Delicias. Alam niyo po, sikat yan nung panahon kasi kahit sa ibang mga kaso, nakikita ko yung pangalan ng shop na yan. So this guy was loaded, no? Victor de la Vega was loaded, but he was also embarrassed. To ensure that he could pay the alimony that was due Doña Josefa, kinonfiscate at inauction ang kanyang mga items sa elite ng Manila. Magkakilala lang naman kayo, di ba? Sipin niyo po yan, i-auction yan, susubasta, public. That's embarrassing. Lahat po yan. Wine jars, raisins, mga things that we don't really think much of. Man, they were luxury items back in the day. Canned meats and vegetables, olive oil, jars of salt, fruit juice, muscat. Pare, hindi ko alam kung anong muscat eh. So anyway, kung ano man yon, binaboy mo yung asawa mo, binaboy din siya in public. Yun ang pang nangyari kay Don Victor. Now, baka inisip nyo, baka inisip nyo, puro lalaki lang ang mga may sala noon. Alam niyo po, tao lang naman tayo, no? So nagkakasala din kahit babae. In fact, ito, nakakalungkot na kwento ng una. She is a Spanish insular, meaning she's a Spanish woman, ethnic, no? But born and raised here in the Philippines, most likely, no, she was born and raised in Cavite. Yan, I remember distinctly. Si Rosario Salanova. She was accused of infidelity by a certain Benito Alcala. Now, ito po yan Benito Alcala had nothing to do with her. Most likely, Benito Alcala filed a case for another person, for a woman who did not want to reveal her identity. Ayaw niya i-reveal ang identity niya. In fact, uso po yan noon. May mga kaso na parang Madam X. Ayan. Hindi pinapasabi kung sino yung ng kaso para lang i-protektahan yung kanyang privacy at pagkatao. Now, itong babaeng to was just 26 when she was suspected of committing adultery. But she was also suspected of committing adultery as far back as 1878, 9 years ago. So if 9 years, she's just 17. No, ang bata-bata niya pa noon nung na-accuse siya of adultery. Now, and she has been moving from one place to another. So basically, para siyang typical kept woman. No? She's moving from Binondo to the working class community of Tondo to relatively nice environment of Sampaloc. Sampaloc was like Alabang Hills back in the day. No, yun yung magandang environment doon. Kung ayaw mo na yung restrictive environment ng Intramuros, you went to Sampaloc. Kung wala ka talagang pera, you lived in Tondo. Kung you wanted to live where the action was, like Makati, you went to Binondo. No? So, she spent 4 months in jail and her properties were inventoried so that she could pay damages. Pero dito, malungkot yung kwento niya kasi her assets were very sparse. Para talaga siyang kabit. Okay? Meron siyang 4 na bowls, 4 na plato. Wala siyang complete set of plates. Wala siyang complete set of this and that. Meron pa siyang bangka just in case magkaroon ng baha. Meron siyang ilang mga libro na luma. She had very few assets. Para sa kanya, babalikan ko ito kasi para siyang ito yung assets ng kept woman. Ito yung assets si number 2. In 1890 naman, a poor guy, Santiago Ramirez, no, from an Indio, a native, just like us, no, most of us, from Pasig, accused this white Ignacia of having a illicit relationship with a Chinese named Joaquin. Ba? May mga ganyan pa, no, alias Joaquin, noong panahon. Meron daw siyang 3 witness from Pasig and also from Tondo. Ito ang problema niya. Sinabi niya rin, I am poor. Wala po akong perang pangkaso. Kung poor ka, sorry ka, walang nangyari sa kaso niya. Dahil nga poor siya. Unfortunately. Now, another one is si Claudio Sores. No? Si Claudio Sores naman was a guy who claimed that his wife Marciana ay niloko na siya daw ay nasa preso. Niloko ng mga tao na nasa preso siya at sinabi sa kanya, oh, para mapiyansa mo ang asawa mo, may pag-sex ka na lang kita ba? Yun yung pangalan ng mama. No? Si Chinese man na kalbo na mataba, na ang alias niya ay si Taba. Makipag-sex ka kita ba? Bibigyan ka namin ng 150, pwede mo nang itubusin yung asawa mo si Claudio. Ang sakit, no? Hindi ko alam, uto siguro si Marciana, nakipag-sex siya kay Taba. Tapos yun nga, nagkaroon ng kaso. No? And doon sa court case, and my Spanish is not very good, no? Yung iba kasi magagaling na talaga Sa akin, 15 units of Spanish lang naman ako So, meron lang mga scenes doon na nag-uusap sa pansiteria, may rice store. Siguro si Taba may rice store. Okay? Okay, and then last naman, itong case na to, ito, matindi. Ito, gusto mo ng cougar? Ito ang ultimate cougar. Si Doña Jacoba Tiemblo. Si Doña Jacoba Tiemblo was also a very liberated woman. She was a mobile merchant. So, she didn't live at home lang. She was moving around, no? And her husband, a silversmith named Balbino Moya, said that she has a relationship, her wife Jacoba, 48 years old then, had a relationship with someone half their age, si Anselmo. Parang artista, no? Jacoba and Anselmo. No? Was just 24 years old, no? Ang tindi. Actually, paulit-ulit kong binasa yung kasong ito kasi totoo ba itong nababasa ko na kalahati lang yung edad? Tindi ni Mami. No? At ito lang, hindi lang yun. Binahay niya si Anselmo. Binahay niya si Anselmo sa mga lugar kung saan wala pa masyadong tao noon, like Paco, which was called Glau noon, and Makati, which was basically Talahiban at that time. No? Nakita din daw sila sa isang silversmith shop sa Intramuros at nakita pang nakasakay sa karumata. Parang yung mga nahuling ng babae at mga lalaki na sumasakay sa taxi. Diba? Naalala niyo may mga ganyan mga scene. Now, in her defense, sabi ni Ms. Tiamblo, hindi ako nangangaliwa dito. Tanong mo kay Balbino, di ba ikaw may anak ka sa iba? 13 years old na yung anak mo? So, basically, yun lang, lighter side ng mga kwento. Okay? Now, bilang observation, no? Tapos na po tayo, last slide na to. Ang masabi ko lang ay, well, divorce should have been an option a long time ago. Okay, just to give you a chronology. Divorce was already allowed dun sa law noong 1889, yung Spanish Civil Code noong late 1800s. By 1910, malaking kaguluhan yan sa Philippine Assembly if they were to grant divorce or not. And then, by 1917, divorce was granted, pero sabi ng aking father, kanina nag-uusap kami, sabi niya, you know what, yung divorce noon, isa lang yung grounds. Sabi ka, oo nga, kasi noon, instead of 9, they watered it down, ang grounds lang ay adultery. Hindi lang yun. Noong 1917, yung grounds lang ay adultery, so babae lang ang pwedeng makasuhan. Iyon lang ang grounds for divorce. Adultery is sa babae lang noon. Now, ang isa pa doon is dapat naganap na yung adultery bago makapag-file for divorce. Ang haba-haba ng proseso. And this is the reason why tinanggal din siya eventually no 1947 after the war. But mind you, during the war, Second World War, the Japanese, to show that they were more liberal than the Americans, the first law that they introduced to us was divorce. Okay? And one of our politicians, and I will not name, actually filed for divorce at that time. Okay? But yan, chismis na lang yan para sa inyo. It's yours to find out kung sino yun. Now, archival documents can tell tales and they reveal realities of the human condition, no? And the spaces where these scenes of people's lives happen. In this case, it's more of the cases allows you to imagine. And in fact, in history, sa methods, imagining spaces matters. Kasi hindi mo naman makukuha lahat. It is an interpretation of the past. It is not the past, no? May leeway naman for that na ma-imagine mo ano kaya. Now, knowledge is power. Simply put, we need to educate our women folk, we need to educate children, we need to educate marginalized people on what their rights are. Especially now at a time when, our rights are being trampled upon. I'm sure you are familiar with extrajudicial killings na nagaganap recently sa Calabarzon, no? Well, near simultaneously. No? We now live in a society that's becoming desensitized to violence. And I hope na hindi yan mangyari sa atin. And knowing your rights is half the journey, no? Now, despite having no divorce, no, women in 19th century Philippines could still demand for a separation. Sorry, hindi divorce. Mali yan. Put their partners to justice and demand material and social recompense. No? Specific legal provisions on some court decisions also underscore the advantages that patriarchy lends to males. And it happens until now. No? So, hindi pa tapos yung laban for women's rights. No? So, totoo lang, nagsasabi yung mga iba, bakit walang Men's Day? Bakit nga nalagyan ng Men's Day? Every day is almost Men's Day. Diba? I mean, it's like yung argument ng Black Lives Matter. No? Kasi sabi ng isa kong kakilala na puti sa Australia, nagalit ako. Sabi niya, but all lives matter. Sabi ko sa kanya, tanga ka ba? All lives do matter, obviously. Pero kita mo naman kung sino ang marginalized, and you are not. And perhaps you will never understand how it is to be discriminated upon. So you're not colored like me. No? So isa yun na kailangan natin linawin na walang kupas yung ganyan mga hirit, no? Women's month is important. It really is, no? I mean, and there's still a lot to be done, no? And just like men, women are also capable of unfaithfulness. Yeah, of course, no? We're all human. And violence is a fluid term. And this is the reason why we should keep on defining things. Kasi we need to update how we define things so that we could master, understand, and know what to do with it, no? because violence is really an abstraction, and many things in life are indeed real, they are felt, but they're abstractions. Okay, yun lamang po. Marami po salamat. Sana may nakuha kayo from the discussion, from the presentation.
Thank you very much, Sir Marco. And that was a very great talk. I think mas relax. May nag-comment nga, mas relax ka. Ganda ng ng mga inserts as well. I have a couple of questions already, but let me just call on someone who also has questions. Dr. Barreto.
Hi, Marco.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello.
The dogs.
Nakakatuwa. I mean, I enjoyed your talk, and I like the fact that your sister advised you to move.
Yeah.
Advised you to move.
Ganyan talaga,
And then, I haven't met your wife, but welcome to the Binalot Talk. Ayun, thank you for watching Marco's presentation. For yung isang question ko, naisip ko, how about what happens to the kids if the couple separate? Sinong may custody ng kids?
Okay, usually ang nangyayari doon ang may custody talaga is the mother.
Okay.
Yung mother talaga, parang halos automatic talaga na yung nanay yung mag-aalaga. Doon sa mga nakita kong kaso, babae. Iisa lang actually yung isang kaso na nakita ko, babae din yung kumuha, pero yung tatay was so distraught kasi feeling niya nagwawala na yung nanay, napapabayaan yung mga bata, and he was demanding to get his children. So doon makita, no? I mean, very human din yung mga stories. Pero yun, ma'am, usually yung babae talaga, halos automatic siya. Unless ang may tama o may problema yung babae.
Okay. And then you mentioned that properties were divided.
Yes.
Yeah. How about lands? Kasama yon, like 50-50?
Kasama yon. 50-50 yung conjugal property. Pero yung property ng babae, once she entered the marriage, kanya yon. I mean, parang sa lalaki din. Di ba? Parang kahit ngayon, meron, so ang alam ko, hindi ako abogado, pero ang alam ko, when you enter the marriage, you have your own property, and I don't think that's part of the conjugal property. So you could
may
get
prenup ba dati? May prenup?
Walang prenup dati. Pero gusto ko lang i-share to. Noong panahon, walang prenup, pero marami, lalo na sa mga mayamang pamilya, may what do you call this? Merong dowry. So, nakakatawa kasi, upon marriage, kine-claim talaga ng babae yung dowry niya. As in, sinasabi niya, ito yung legal document, notarized, na si so and so, upon marriage, will receive this amount. And ito is to comply with the provision na kailangan ibigay yung pera yun. So, yun lang naman. Pero wala pa ako nakitang, walang prenup.
Okay. Yeah, your talk was very enlightening to me and to most of us. Kasi siguro we have this view na 100 years ago, women were meek and mild and we're just quiet and silently suffering. Pero ang dami palang cases, no? But most of the cases you presented came from the upper class.
Yes.
That's also what I was also going to comment, because if it's from the upper class, that also gives an idea possibly regarding sa kung bakit kailangan dalhin agad sa korte, because there's materials might be involved or public shaming. So mas something to, I guess, something to lose for both parties. So as opposed to different thing, social status 100 years ago.
Yes, totoo yun. At ang isa pa is, unlike today, for example, di ba, like women nowadays work, no? Back in the day, they also did, but lalo na for the lower classes. Women were really working. They were working women. They had the double burden of tending to the home and taking care and making a living. But for those from the upper classes, parang status symbol, it's like Victorian times, eh. Status symbol that you were not working and you didn't have to work. You were a woman of leisure. In fact, it carried over until the American period. No? So ang ano lang is, yun nga, makes me wonder then, may mga nang kaso pa rin na mga iba, no, from the middle and up lower classes, no? But it's very rare. And which is also partially part ng lesson din na kahit sa disaster literature, the ones who are able to work the system more are the ones who are more educated. Kaya nga,
The more
education,
visible, yeah. They're the
oh,
more visible.
it matters a lot. Kaya nga dapat talaga yung mga tao, in lieu of economic assets, they really should be educated and not necessarily school, no, but know your rights, know this, know that, know which buttons to push, no. Siguro din yung nga dahil independent naman ng mga babae from the lower classes, or they carry their own weight. Hindi sila ganun ka desperate for alimony. Hindi masyado ata, no? I mean, one thing that you could explore. I'm not saying that's correct, no? Posible po. Actually, katunayan nga, they say, tapos na raw ang 19th century Philippines pag-aralan. Hindi pa ho, ang dami pang pwedeng pag-aralan. Hindi pa nga tayo pumuntang Spain, Philippine documents pa lang yan. hindi pa ho natin nasasagad. So there's a lot more, no? But thank you po sa comment. Actually, may nakikita akong mga questions dito.
Yes, I think may mga questions rin, and also may mga directly message sa akin. We'll ask first kay Miss Pia Puangco. So
Pia.
So the law support that the women has no control of her body and affections, and that lack of economic power renders her by force compliant. How does this affect the psychology of Filipino men today in their views of women, marriage, and freedom? I guess this is to connect yung mga the continuity of the women, the lack of economic power of women, and therefore they are compliant during the 19th century, and how this has in turn affected the male view on women, marriage, and freedom during the 21st century, I suppose. Yeah.
Actually, totoo naman yan, di ba? Parang if you look at societies, no, there are different planes, no? And sometimes our values don't change immediately. Parang nakaganon pa rin siya. Hindi pa ako sigurado, no? I mean, I think nasagot ko naman yung tanong na totoo naman. I agree with Ria. Ria, by the way, is my classmate from grade school. Madam, kumusta? Yung support, totoo, yung legal support, no? Talagang pinapakita na talagang wala siyang economic might.
Sorry.
So parang yung, how does this affect the psychology of men? Ako, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing that I probably might not be in a position to really answer. But if dun sa mga nababasa kong literature, I think you're right, Maria, no? Na economic might really matters, no? So kung the more that you see more women having a greater share of the family wealth, for example, malaking bagay yan na pwedeng mabago yung pananaw ng psychology ng mga lalaki. Pero ito, aaminin ko, I know of some men, of course I will not name who they are, no, and it doesn't really matter, pero some of them are very insecure when their wife earns more than they do or are more successful than them. So parang isip ko, but this is a partnership, no? This is among equals, no? Hindi mo tayo nandito para magbilangan, eh. So just be happy, no? Pero yun nga, unfortunately, yung kamachohan, hindi pa rin talaga yan nauubos. Makikita mo naman sa commercial, di ba? I mean, yung mga commercial pa nga na nakatikim ka na ba ng 15 anyos is terrible. Di ba? May mga ganyan panong-panon. And in fact, until today, it's still happening. So, yeah, yun yung isa example that there's a lot more to be done.
I guess it's also maganda rin to na maging, sorry, I'm jumping in, na baka merong, eventually, this can actually be a start to see the change, because there's ngayon na record mo na kung ano yung mga materials owned by women at of a certain social status during the 19th century. If we can go further, 18th century, then we can have, and of course we might also have data from the 20th century, then we can see how material culture and social status has affected women in the long terms, like for 100 years, 300 years. So
I think isang maganda rin makita right now, and in relation to what Ria was mentioning, no, tama yun, to take stock of things, and you will see that a lot more women are working. A lot of them are marrying later in life, and actually, my studies have shown that the later women marry and the more educated they are, the better mothers they become. Whatever that means, kung ano ibig sabihin nun, pero kasi di ba, parenting now is really a shared endeavor, no? Pero yun nga parang I think it starts with us and then with institutions, and I think institutions such as UP have long been trying to promote this notion that we are equal and we should share both sa economics at sa work.
Yeah.
And I think papunta naman sana tayo doon.
Hopefully. And speaking of institutions, the next question has probably something to do with that. So there was a direct message to me. What was the Catholic Church's response to vow? I guess during the 19th century. Was there statements from the church?
Wala.
Mm.
Wala. Actually,
But secular na yung di ba? Tama ba ako? Even
No,
though
no,
it was on paper only, the government was secular.
Yung secularization, hindi ko nga alam kung nag-succeed talaga yung secularization kasi di ba nagkagulo noong 72. Ang dami pa rin orders. Jesuits came back, no? So I don't think they were still very influential at that time.
Yes, and parsing of land
hindi
was
pa
also for basic church. That's true.
Oo, grabe sila talaga nung time na yon. Pero gusto ko rin din isingit to medyo off topic, no? Pero kung nagtataka tayo kung bakit hanggang ngayon walang divorce pa sa Pilipinas, I'd like to give a geographic perspective, okay, an historical perspective. Geographically speaking, the Philippines is one of the farthest colonies from Spain. Okay? And we were basically managed via Mexico, not even Spain, no, for the most part. That gave the church so much leeway here to become very powerful and influential. To the point we're in, hindi na sila napakahirap na nilang tibagin. Na hanggang ngayon, mahirap pa rin silang tibagin. I'm a Roman Catholic, no? Pero at the same time, makikita mo naman, they're too influential hanggang ngayon, unfortunately. Ano po ba yung nandito pang mga tanong?
There's another question. So from Arvin Caro.
Hi Arvin.
So based on the stories, did the treatment of women improve through time, at least in the context of the period? That's an interesting question as well.
It's hard to say. Mahirap sabihin. Pero kung titignan mo ang popular culture, nakita mo yung picture ng poster, yung nasa yung title page ng presentation. It's basically Happy New Year, yung title. Happy New Year, and then binubugbog yung asawa. So mukhang talamak talaga ang wife beating noon. And I don't think they were even members of the upper class. They were a typical Indio couple. So makes you wonder, no? Kung nagbago ba at that time, mahirap kung sagutin. But thank you, Arvin, for the question. Good luck sa Masters in Disaster Management.
I guess pwede na rin mag-put together in my interdisciplinary studies na rin ito.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pwede.
Nagbanggit rin si Miss Ria Pangko na she can also do a video and to create more studies that link past to current. So I guess that's also the challenge.
That would be nice.
Yeah. So, lalo na ngayon sa I think that's why it's also very important that your thesis will be published in a book, di ba, soon?
No, wala pang plans. I'm hoping.
Okay. I heard from 2 weeks ago na may mga interested. So
sana naman.
There's another question from Dr. Barreto.
Hi, Marco. Me again. Wala yung question ko. In terms of spaces, kasi yung last time, di ba, you presented us with a GIS of Metro Manila showing the cases.
Yes.
Okay. Ngayon, where are the cases mostly located? In Intramuros pa rin ba?
Maraming sa Intramuros, pero maganda yung tanong mo. Ang problema ko kasi with the adulterios, it's one of the more difficult documents to read. Kasi ang pangit ng pagka-preserve. So, minsan, hindi nakalagay kung ano yung lugar. Unfortunately. Pero may solusyon dyan eh. Ang isang solusyon dyan ay suyurin pa yung asuntos kriminales. Kasi I'm sure marami pang divorce cases.
But sorry, actually in relation to that. So, yung mga cases ay dinadala sa local courts, it doesn't have to go directly to Manila, doon sa courts ng Manila.
No,
Saan ba siya pinafile?
at that time, the city of Manila had 5 courts. If I remember it correctly, one in Quiapo, one in Intramuros, Binondo, and there are 2 more. So may mga para sila mga circuit courts, may mga local courts sila, and then siguro kung sino ang may jurisdiction silang mag-hold ng kaso. Pero yun din ang maganda rin na na-point out mo yun kasi alam mo pag binasa mo yung kaso, ang hirap intindihin kung sino ang nag-hear ng case. Mahirap talaga. Parang actually we need someone who's really good in Spanish. I heard you've got someone from ASP na fluent, EL at of course.
I think si Tara Hernandez, who is researching 19th century documents right now. So we can also ask.
Si yung husband ni Tara.
I think nagsuspecialize siya sa 16th century. Tama.
Okay.
So yun, ang dami pa talagang ang dami pang, halimbawa ang Asuntos Criminales, meron silang 72 bundles, 72 CDs. And yung 72 CDs na yan, ang natingnan ko pa lang, 4. Kasama ko si Alfonso lumabas pala. Hi Alfonso, Pons. Siya yung aking magic RA nung time ng thesis. And actually, yun nga, sabay kami nagsusuyod nun. Alam nyo, kahit magkaroon ka pa ng 100 lives, parang Mario Brothers, hindi mo maubos yun. Ang dami talaga. Hindi pa kasama yung civil cases. May asunto civilis din. Hindi pa nababasa yun. Madami pa ho talaga.
Ang tanong, actually may based on that din sa court decision. So yung judge yung nagde-decide, 'di ba? So paano pumipili ng judge? Para ba rin yung lottery pa rin dati or
yan ang hindi ko alam. Yan po ang hindi ako sigurado. In fact, nang weird nga nun kasi merong lawyer at may lawyeran. Meron, pakikita mo kasi,
like you can defend yourself? Parang ganun?
Merong isang nag-defend ng sarili. There was one who defended herself. Merong isang case na ganun. Pero yung mga lawyeran, yung siguro hindi pa nakakapasa ng bar. May bar na rin sila noon eh. Pero yung mga lawyers noon, pag binasa mo mga notarial documents, para silang old boys club. Ang konti lang nila. Magkakakilala sila eh. Maliit lang. So mas maliit pa siguro yung mga judges.
I would, and also I wouldn't be surprised din siguro kasi if to become a lawyer you have to have an education and yung mga educated will go into other fields. So once you become a lawyer and to become a judge, I don't know, siguro naman yung process dati, you have to have a certain number of years to practice as a lawyer before you can be chosen.
Saka, but one thing that I'm sure of, the judge would have been Spanish.
Interesting.
Sure ako dyan. Kasi yan isa sa mga pinaglaban natin. We wanted more representation, to be part of the bureaucracy, and we weren't. No, we were clerks at the most. No? So, yeah, that I'm sure they were.
But the lawyers could also be Filipino.
Oh, yeah, some lawyers were Indians.
Yeah. Kasi maraming mga kasama sa katipunan ng mga lawyers din, di ba?
Yes. Totoo.
And speaking of that, actually regarding sa race, ang isa pang tanong, so may mga, nabanggit mo to briefly kanina so maybe you can elaborate on it. May difference between may mga difference ba between the deliberation on the severity on the consequences based on race? So for example, so tatapos na tayo sa gender, pero pagdating sa race, kung Chinese female, Chinese male, or it was
dito sa court cases, ma'am, wala naman. Actually, magulat ka nga eh. This is one thing that I like about studying archival documents. Kasi even when you look at, for example, land sales, in land sales, they didn't care if you were male or female. They didn't care if you were white or brown or yellow. Sorry to use the term, no? Ang importante lang is you had the money. So, Noong panahon, wala talaga masyadong distinction pag nagbebentahan sila, which is actually interesting kasi if you look at other the experiences of some nations in Southeast Asia, for example, talagang geographically and socially along racial lines talaga yan. Pati yung settlements. Tayo hindi, yung settlements natin were sabog. Halo-halo talaga tayo. Which is actually interesting. Bihira din yun.
You were talking about dun sa Sampaloc at saka yung Binondo and yung Intramuros.
Okay.
But so they all have their different courts. So anyone can buy from those lands, even the ones who are from the probinsya.
Oh yes.
Oh.
Oh yes. Yes. Actually, there were, that's another chapter in my thesis. There were women who were Manileñas but had provincial assets, and they hired men to manage their assets. Or even in Manila, like she had so many apartments. She had another man. She hired a man to collect rent.
Okay. Wow. So they left summer houses in the city, parang summer house.
Alam mo, kakaiba talaga pag nakita mo yung documents, parang, uy, sounds familiar.
And it's still continuing. So parang,
yes.
Sounds familiar.
Yes.
There's a question, Lance Collins.
Hi, si Lance.
Hi, Marco.
Hi, Lance.
Hi. I'm curious, did the archive reveal any cases of same-sex extramarital activities by the wife or the husband? And is that something even actionable in a legal sense? And I only ask because I know during the American period, there was a very limited form of divorce if the wife was convicted of adultery or if the husband was convicted of concubinage. But I also know that those terms were gendered. So
yes.
And so I'm just curious if that even shows up in the archive in the end of the 19th century.
There's one case, but I don't know if if the guy was married or not, or if he was married or unattached, but there was a sodomy case. May nakita ko sodomy case involving a Chinese guy and an Indian native man. There's one case, but I don't know if it was a married person. Pero may sodomy case. And I'll try to check again if there was a case wherein it was sort of implied na the guy may have been homosexual. Parang ganun. I'm not sure. Kaya nga I can't say for certain. Parang I have to review the document again. But the sodomy case, I am certain. Ewan ko kung nakita rin ni Ponson. Sa Asuntos Criminalis yun eh. Parang sodomy. Siyempre. Chismis yun. Binasa ko kaagad. Pero nalimutan ko na yung details ng case. Yeah.
I think there was a Binalot Talk recently, well, maybe a few years ago, about somebody who did a research on the cases brought against the Chinese sailors. I think, if I could be wrong, but it was also between boys and the sailors. So, but wow. I'm not sure. Yes.
I remember that, Anna, but yes. I forgot who gave that talk.
I'm looking for the title as well. It should be. I think that that's already a published data.
I guess, but the question I'm actually interested in, I think the answer to what you're saying is no. Is the grounds for separation or divorce, and whether or not that same-sex activity within, by someone in the marriage is grounds for a separation or.
I think theoretically yes, because they always they stated that public scandal or shame on the family. So yeah, it could be grounds, no? Kasi that would be at that time shameful. No?
What if it's the wife and a woman?
I don't know. I haven't encountered any cases. But that's nice. Okay. Actually, once I find one, I'll let you know. We're friends on Facebook. So huli ka, diba? Oh, meron isa.
And that would be a great subject as well, or a chapter in your book, I would think.
Ako.
Dami ko na iniisip sa book that you will be publishing.
Oh, by the way, nga pala, if anyone is interested in accessing the thesis, Murdoch University actually makes it free, allows people to access the thesis or the dissertations of their students for free.
Oh, perfect.
So all you have to do is go to Murdoch University repository, and then type my surname or type my full name, and then you will get access to the document in PDF form.
That's amazing.
So maraming mga taga-UP rin like Jerry Galang. And if you're interested in 16th century Philippines, there's another guy, Max Findley. So you can also type James Warren. Yun din, yung mga anak niya. Lalabas din kasi marami Philippines yung topic eh.
Yes. That's a great idea actually, and if people might be, I'm sure a lot of people are interested to access it. There's a question here from Sir Biggs Canilao. Sir, hi Sir Marco, great talk once again. Sir, in your archival research, did you also encounter archival illustrations or depictions like line arts or drawing perhaps of these incidents or public displays of punishment? Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much, Michael, sa question. Unfortunately, wala pa ako nakikita. I think meron sa isang case ay nakita ko yung this is a case of yung violent attack against someone. May mga evidence, may sketches ng evidence. Sketches ng scene of the crime, but not necessarily itong mga public displays of punishments. Also, I think ang kailangan ko rin linawin na at that time, the Spanish authorities were not so keen on punishing people anymore for spectacle. Hindi na. One reason behind it is that it doesn't make the person productive, no? If we're going to maim him or her. So, pakinabangan na lang natin, like dalhin mo sa public works, no? Ganyan. Pero hindi na uso sa kanila yung nananakit masyado nung panahon. Pero maganda po yan kasi if you're thinking of illustrations, I'd recommend one source sa UST Benavides Library. Sinishare ko na. I mean, usually historians madamot yan sa sources. Ako parang no, go ahead. I-try niyo po yung na-type ko. Ang title po ng dyaryo ay Manileñas, and you'll find several issues, and they do have editorial cartoons na pwede nagpapakita ng punishments or even racism against the Chinese. Yung mga ganun sila, yung mga before and after, Chinese, tapos eventually naging locust. So parang locust ng lipunan, Chinese, mga ganyan. They had that, no? So magandang makita mo yung mga materials doon, lalo na yung mga satirical newspapers, because they do tend to show yung mga deep dark feelings ng mga tao towards other people at that time. So,
and that's also yung representation. Interesado ko because last week you presented some drawings, right? Or comics, tama ba? Did that also come from Manileñas?
Yes, Manileñas ang pinakamarami. Marami talaga Manileñas.
But in terms of course, these are all court cases or court documents, but there's no official sketches, parang ganun. Ewan ko kasi siguro popular notion lang yung iniisip ko.
No, walang, oo nga, hindi, actually sayang, no? Walang sketches, but may mga sketches ng evidence. Actually, kahit si Pons, I think Pons could answer this kasi parang may nakikita kami minsan kutsilyo, ganyan, or ito yung ginamit, ito yung nagamit dun sa pag-abort. May mga ganun kaming na-enkwentro, hindi yata sa pag-abort, pero may nakikita kaming mga evidence talaga na may sketches. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. So, yeah, maganda po yan na tingnan. Pero when you say archival illustrations ba, Michael, are you referring to just punishments or anything? Any item or any incident or any scene? Kasi kung any scene, marami, sir. Marami po talaga.
Maybe you can answer.
Hello, sir. Opo sir, mga public display to parang serve as parang vicarious experience for mga spectators, ganun.
Ay, meron ako
Thank you, sir.
may nakita ko isa, yun, buti na ano mo, may nakita ko isa na, di ba si Rizal, binaril sa bagong bahay mo, Luneta. Sorry, hindi ko na nga maalala, history pa man din ako dati. Yung lugar kung saan siya binaril, talagang, ano yan, place of spectacle yan. Kasi may mga, ano doon, may mga scenes na cartoons sa mga India, nagwawala, hinahanap nila yung mga tao, kung may nagaganap, ano ba nangyayari dun sa gitna, etc. etc. May mga ganun. Meron siyang, pero ang isa pang maganda siguro na i-share, yung Manililla, nakakatawa siya kasi yun, Alfonso Lumabas gave some type machetes, murder, assault weapons, tentripons. So, meron din pong mga maganda po yung mga tula kasi yung mga tula, it says a lot about society at that time. Halimbawa, mga I met love on the Tranvia. May mga ganyan. May mga ganyan talaga. Oo, mga nakakatuwa. In fact, hanggang American period, if you read yung so wag lang po yung pictures ang tingnan natin, tingnan din natin yung mga yung mga
Yeah.
Halimbawa, may portion doon. There was a time, ang Philippines Free Press, ang gamit niya, meron silang young person section. Yung young person section parang place where you could declare your love for someone. Gagawa ka ng tula na pag dumadaan ka, parang nagkakaamoy kang pupot yung paligid.
Wow.
Pero actually, yun talaga, may makikita ka. So matatawa ka kasi it shows you how rural Manila was. Yet at the same time, napakita na, the people were trying to figure out how am I going to use this space? How am I going to use media space? Yung mga nagkasakit ako, nagamot ako ng nurse, gusto ko lang masabi, maging pasalamat na hindi ko malimutan ng magandang mukha. It's really weird. And,
like a public forum.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah.
Yeah, yung social media po nila.
And they were really social rin. There's some delay siguro pero it really is social kasi you're interacting as opposed to just reading an article that's just a one way, nobody can react. But if you have a space on the press, that's interesting. Yeah. The early social media.
Yes, early talaga, and I think something that people should study. There's one question here from Rachel Reyes, which is quite interesting. In connection with illustrations, are there any examples of pornographic or erotic material? Alam niyo po, actually I'm trying to make a study right now related dyan. Marami po yung mga advertisements na sexual yung content or sexualize yung babae. Bawa, they're trying to portray babae lang. They were, halimbawa, di tindera ka bang nakita na tight-fitting yung damit? Ganyan siya, may dala-dala siyang mga bayong o kung ano man, tapos naglalakad siya, tapos nagsasalita, may text. Kasi doon pa noon, may mga text yung mga ads, no? Pero nakaganon siya, tapos kita mo, wow, leg siya, yung katawan niya, napaka-curvy, meron ding mga material na, yon sa Manililla, may babae na nag-aayos, naka-corset. Tapos makita mo, may tatlong lalaking naninilip. May mga ganon, meron talaga noon, lalo na yung mga parang FHM nila noon. Manililla is borderline FHM for me.
And I guess may nag-study na ba doon sa Manililla? I guess there should be.
There should be sana. And it's readily available. It's nasa UST library siya. Ang ganda ng copy. Very nice copies. And I think
it's not digital yet.
No, it's digital.
Okay.
It's available.
Oh, wow.
And then parang people should explore it kasi one can't really claim na ako lang nakakita niyan kasi ang daming pwedeng aralin doon. So I think the more research the better. So I don't think magandang magdamutan.
Yes. I think Ria Puangco was also saying that earlier, but in direct message, that the Manililla is also some imageries are also interesting to study, and they can just pwede siyang i-append, or not really append. There's already a separate, ako yun nagsabi nun, parang it's already a separate study na rin how images during that time were manipulated and how it's thought was it a representation of masses? Is it a representation of just a certain artist?
Yes.
Galing,
Actually,
ganda.
actually pati postcards, lalo yung mga kano. The kano were really bastos, no? Kasi nung nasa States ako, hindi ko na nilabas sa thesis kasi hindi man part ng study. Nakita ko ng postcards of naked women na members ng indigenous groups. Tapos may mga text, bukod talaga. Tapos may text na in the firing line, mga ganyan. Man, really mean. Tapos meron sila mga tula on how they got drunk and womanized. May mga postcards sila na yun ang nakalagay. So, it's really disturbing, makikita mo. But usually mga sigarilyo at cigars ang pinakabastos or pinaka-suggestive.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Miss Reyes, marami po. Magsawa po kayo.
Ay, ang dami pa nga pwedeng pag-aralan dito eh. And I'm sure. At ang ano pa, parang ang daming, from the information that you got, I think there's a lot more, ang dami ko pa nga actually questions dito regarding sa archives, sa religious houses, yung Beaterio. Interesting siya. Kasi, were they connected to the churches? Are
Hindi
they
ko alam if
separate?
I think mga nuns na nag-handle ng Beaterio ata. I think ang best source yan would be Maria Svetlana Camacho, who's from the University of Asia and the Pacific. She's an expert in the field.
Yeah, okay. Camacho.
So siya po, si Maria Camacho. With a Y ata siya, with a Y.
All right. Okay. I think it's already 2:30. We'll have one more question. Can we call on Dr. Barreto again?
Sinulat ko na. Wait.
Okay.
Hanapin ko. Marco, last question. What happens to unfaithful married women who got pregnant by their lovers? And then, are there cases of abortions?
Wala akong nakita ng yung mga nabuntis ng lover nila, tapos wala pa po akong nakikita. Pero yung abortions, actually may bundle sa archives, ang pangalan aborto.
Oh, okay.
Aborto mismo. Pero yun nga, pag babasahin mo, good luck. Kasi ang sama ng pagka-preserve. Pero yun nga, meron talaga. May mga case of abortion, I mentioned one case, na pagchismisan siya, nabuntis yung bata, tapos biglang 5 days later, may katawan ng bata sa Sapa, sa creek, sa Marikina. Inarrest sila, yung mga magulang, actually, yung nanay at yung atake, anak na yung dalaga, pero they were acquitted kasi, well, they were charged something else, but they were not tried for abortion or infanticide. Kasi the baby was already dead when they threw the baby away. But it was more of an act of shame. Diba? Na nahiya sila na buntis yung isa, kaya tinapon nila yung katawan ng bata sa... Mula noon hanggang ngayon, ang daang tubig talaga, basurahan eh. Tingin ng Pilipino eh. Diba? Tapon mo yung ayaw mo makita.
Isa pa yung magandang pag-aralan, the concept of water.
Maganda yung sinabi ni Marco na related but separate topic. Sabi niya, ayaw mo makita. Kasi naisip ko lang, di ba, yung bangkay, di ba, the dead, yung lalagay sa bangka. So, something, interesting what you said. Ayaw mo makita yung...
Or tabok na siya.
Dead. Well, I look forward to the book, Marco, and to
sa book, wala.
And to your future research.
Thank you. Okay, yun lang naman po. Maraming salamat sa pagnood.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Sir Marco. Thank you, everyone who came and listened to Dr. Marco's very interesting talk and for sharing your thoughts. I think there's still a lot of things that people can ask. If it's okay, can you give your email address or
sure.
If anyone has any questions, you can also email Dr. Lagman that, and I'm very sure that he will be back for another Binalot soon.
Sana naman.
We will invite you, especially kung face to face na rin lalo na. hopefully.
Yes, yes.
And for next week, our Binalot Talk will be by Dr. Grace Barreto Tesoro, who was also speaking earlier. So motives in Philippine burial sites. So maybe that can also be a jump off point regarding dun sa sinabi ninyo, Sir Marco, about the mga bagay na ayaw makita or hindi lang kayang makita sa ngayon. Just, ganda pa ako. And this talk is currently being recorded. We will provide us a copy to Dr. Marco, and if with your go ahead, we will upload this on the YouTube channel. If not, we won't upload it.
Actually,
Yes.
ma'am, there was someone who asked kung pwede daw na makakuha ng copy, but they were hoping this month sana kasi Women's Month, they would like to parang discuss this sa barangay nila. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Actually, we also had from people from the answer who missed it 2 weeks ago. So we're just currently editing the video from 2 weeks ago, and we will also just yung edit. We'll just clean up yung noise ko sa background ng construction workers. At saka yung construction, pasensya na. At saka yung, I guess we'll put a little logo, and then we'll put it up sa YouTube rin namin within next week, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone and thank you also to Dr. Lagman for helping us this month.
Marco na lang. Wala akong pangalan mo sa doc. Di naman ako nakakareseta ng Combantrin eh.
Pero nakakareseta ka ng mga konseptong mga masasayang pag-usapan.
Oo, pang-inuman.
Oo, tama yan. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. And thank you, sir, and thank you to everyone who came here. If you have any questions, again, just please email Dr. Marco and Dr. Marco Lagman, and we will see you again next week for the next Binalot Talk. Thank you.